All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast, episode 170. Today's podcast, I'm going to talk about, are we cooked as Canadians, maybe even as North Americans? I was trying to sit with it, wasn't getting super clear guidance on what was coming through for the podcast today, but the thing that kept on popping in mind was this idea about the state of the world, and is this something that we really need to be paying attention to and worrying about? And so that's what I'm going to go with. And what the imagery that came to mind was the gremlins. So I'm kind of aging myself if you remember what the gremlins were. But essentially the image that popped in mind while I was sitting here in meditation saying, hey, what does the world need today? That's what popped in mind. And I was like, and I recognize it's usually coming from like that place of like the unknown is when I kind of like wasn't there. I was kind of like right in between that place of asleep and awake, and now I'm here thinking about the gremlins. And so then that it came into my awareness that I'm thinking about the gremlins, and I said, well, why am I thinking about the gremlins? And the next scene that was shown to me from that movie was so if you don't know what the gremlins are, there's cute little fuzzy little teddy bear looking things, but if they eat after midnight, they turn into like these monsters. And Gizmo, which was my dog's name when I was a kid, because Gremlins was a big movie back then, was the one little guy that decided to not eat the food. And so when I asked, like, why am I thinking about the gremlins and what does this have to do with the state of the world or whatever it was kind of like all of the social media posts, all of the information that's out there about how Trump's terrible, how Carney's the worst, how Canada's cooked and it's going down going in a bad direction, which are all things that I actually kind of believe, right? Is like I don't believe Canada's headed in a great direction. I don't think that net zero Carney is good for the country. I don't believe totalitarianism is the direction that we want to head. I don't believe more censorship is good. Like these are all things that really worry me. And so with that, I was like, okay, well, let me actually dig into this. And I don't really have a plan for what's going to come out over this podcast. But that little gremlin scene reminded me of kind of what all of humanity is kind of doing is we are eating the food after midnight, which is turning us all into these little monsters. And I think it's a great analogy, actually, now that the more I kind of tune into it, because the food that we are eating is this endless stream of content, this endless stream of negativity, this endless stream of the world is going to end. And if you keep seeing that over and over again, and the algorithm continues to show you it, that's what you're going to start believing. And so I think the first thing to recognize is that the world has been evolving for billions of years, and it will continue to evolve, whether Mark Carney's here or Donald Trump is here or anything along these lines. And we've had all of these problems throughout the history of time, and we're still here and we've survived. And so I think with that, we can recognize that good will always prevail. And I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes, and believe me, like I get wrapped up in this all the time. Like, I mean, practically, once a week, my wife and I are being like, should we get out of this country? and so, but when I really kind of like sit with it, I do trust that we're all going to be fine. And eventually the pendulum will swing too far, and they'll take things too far, and a new era of government will come in. Eventually people will be pushed too far, and they won't stand for it anymore, and we'll usher in a new era. And so that's what I actually truly believe. I truly believe that good always prevails. If you want to just look at COVID, it's like, I was one of the very few percentage of the population that stood strong and didn't get vaccinated. And, that took a lot of courage and a lot of strength to stand against the narrative, to stand against what everyone else is telling you, to stand against my friends, to stand against my family sometimes. And, but now we're seeing that the truth caught up to all the lies, essentially. And this is what happens over and over again throughout the history of time, is that good always wins. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than we want it to. And that's what I think the number one thing I think we want to start with is that good will always win. And so if we can trust in the fact that good will always win, what's the next step for us? Well, the next step is to turn inwards. And this is like, the reason I know that this is true is because it's it's like it's like the guiding spiritual principle that was the source of all of my coaching and everything. Was like, it's never about what's going on out there. It's always about what's going on in here. But it's so easy, especially in the day and age of social media and everything, to get caught up in believing that it is about what's going on out there, right? And in not trusting that everything is going to be okay. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't stay informed and you don't get ready to move in the event that something happens, war comes or whatever. Sure, yeah, that's all stuff that you have to be aware of. But the endless consuming of the world is going to end is not a great place to be. And so, what do you do internally to make sure that you're in a good space for all of this? And I think practically, what I am doing is just making sure that like my house is in order, making sure that I'm out of debt, I got good income streams, I have the freedom to move quickly if I had to. Like, these are the kind of things that I'm kind of like preparing and being ready for. But with all that being said, I don't think any of it's going to be necessary. I think that we're going to be totally fine. And then the other thing is that like all of these talking heads, including myself, because I'm a talking head, are basically saying like, we have to look over here, we have to look over here, we have to be worried about this, we have to be worried about this. And I'm recently reading Hawkins' book called Discovering the Presence of God, and one of the lines that like really stuck with me out of that book was he said that like God doesn't need any help. Right? And and we put whatever your interpretation of God is in there, but that universal unfolding that is making us better, that is moving us towards an easier life, a more fulfilling life, more advanced states of consciousness. Recognizing that energy, there's nothing that you have to do to be a part of it. You're just a part of it as a result of existing, and so that energy doesn't need the help from anybody. And so for us to buy into, we got to believe this talking head or this talking head, it's all kind of like it's not really necessary. Another thing that Hawkins used to say is, let the angry people of the world worry about making the changes. And that's kind of controversial because people say silence is just as bad as being on the other side or whatever that is. But when you really begin to recognize that there is this energy that is evolving and that is moving us towards higher states of consciousness, the best versions of ourselves, then there's nothing really to do besides observe it all, right? And continue to undo the programs within you that free you from like temptation, and to free you from the temptation of trying to solve the world's problems, to try and over prepare for through the endless consumption of content of the world ending, right? And then this leads me to like the ultimate like recognition is that all of this is based on like fear of not wanting to experience discomfort, not wanting to experience death. And then when we recognize that we are something greater than body and mind, and there is no death, and then there is nothing to fear, and all fear is an illusion, then we can even like relax even more. And how do you get to that space, I guess, would be the next question that you begin to ask. And that again comes from turning inward. Now this goes beyond turning inward, like with respect to keeping your house in order. We're talking about keeping your mind and your body in order as well. And so if in order to get to a space where you truly believe that everything is going to be fine, that comes with a deep understanding and awareness that we are something greater than the body and mind, right? And that's like kind of like where all spiritual growth begins. And so when you learn to take this step back and you look to observe the body and you observe the mind, then you can start asking yourself, well, what is it that is allowing me to observe? And what that is that allows you to observe is your consciousness, your higher self, that's beyond all form. And that's what will go on beyond the physical life. And the more you get connected to that awareness, the more you begin to pick up on the patterns that you developed over the course of your history of your whole entire life. So like we are essentially just like walking around as a bunch of behaviors and protection mechanisms that we picked up over the course of our life. So we pick them up, and we pick those up unconsciously. And when we begin to realize through observation what those patterns, protections, behaviors are, we can then begin to undo them all. And as we undo them all, what will happen is we continue to lower the noise more and more of the mind. For example, to give you a story, it's like, one of the protections that I picked up along the way was I needed to make money in order to not feel the shame of pain and the pain of not having enough throughout the course of my life. And so that one protection mechanism that I took on unconsciously was a result of millions and millions of thoughts throughout the course of my life. And so when I learned to face the pain of being less than, not having enough, the shame that was associated with, driving shitty cars when I was a kid, my dad had terrible cars, and the embarrassment of not living in the best house. When I learned to be okay in that pain, the protection that I once needed got dialed down. And in that dialing down of that endless thoughts that were going through my mind, all from this place of protection, I then created another level of awareness. And so the more you step out of the mind, the more you become aware of those programs, the more you deal with those programs, the more clarity that you get. And so through that process, you begin to become more and more connected to this higher self, not the small self, which is the ego, which is primitive, which is, here for our survival. We get connected to our higher self. And in that connection to higher self, you begin to realize that nothing of this world is what it seems. Everything in this world we have given it its value, and you will go on beyond this existence. And so when you really, really, truly know that, then the fear of death kind of like completely goes away. And this is what I've experienced over the course of my life, is that, there was moments where I lacked courage. I would avoid confrontation. I was fearful of getting into physical altercations. And all of that was from this, believing that I was the body, and that if I were to get hurt or die, that it was like the end, essentially. It's really what was at the core of those beliefs. And so when you begin to connect more with higher self and less with small self, then you recognize, hey, I'm completely fine. And that leads to courage, because then you no longer are in this ultimate protection and needing of the survival of the body, if that makes sense. And that's kind of like a deep answer. And so anyways, what does this have to do with the world ending? Just to circle this whole entire thing back. What it has to do with the world ending is that if you really truly believe that, you are something greater than the body and mind, then whatever happens in the world is like no big deal, right? And yeah, sure, could there be suffering and everything that goes along with that? Of course there is, right? But all of that we have given our value to, all emotion we've given value to. And so, for example, if you truly believe that we are eternal beings, then, death would be like, a physical death would be nothing, right? It's like, it would just be like, oh, whoever died passed on to the next realm, and we'll see him again, kind of thing. It would literally be nothing. So grateful that we got to spend some time together in this physical reality, right? Like, that's literally all it would be. And so this is the reason that we are trying to get to higher states of consciousness. Now, here's the other thing that was coming to me, is that as our life becomes easier and easier and easier, and you can see where this is going with like AI and all of this stuff, is like we are moving to a place where the typical worldly reason for being around, which is to make money, build material wealth, have materialism, have experiences, it's not going to have as much value anymore, because we are moving to a place where probably money won't even be a thing. We're moving to a place where we won't have to work anymore. Robots are going to do everything. And this is probably 30, 40 years out. But then the question will be, what will be left, right? Because everybody's purpose in this life is associated with usually egotistical values of gain and getting. And so when there's no longer anything to gain or get, what is it that people will find purpose in? And what that will be is in the transcendence of the limitations of the ego, so we can experience higher and higher states of consciousness. Now, the great news is that there have been many sages and avatars that have already kind of laid that roadmap out for us. And so the more people that move into higher states of consciousness, the more people that they will bring along with them. And so it's kind of like the Roger Bannister effect. So it's like, Roger Bannister was the guy that broke the 4-minute mile. And up until then, it was believed that the human body couldn't break the 4-minute mile. And so Roger Bannister did it, and he essentially cleared the way, put the knowingness into collective consciousness that this was possible. And then like, I think it was like not even that long, a couple of weeks after, other people began to break that 4-minute mark because the knowledge of how to get there was available to all, right? And so this is essentially what's happening with enlightenment. And we are probably going to see, and actually we already are seeing an awakening of mankind. We're all waking up to all of the programs, all of the propaganda, everything that we have been buying into. We're all waking up to it. And this is why I'm actually, as I do this podcast, actually, I'm actually starting to feel more positive about the direction that the world is heading, because more and more people are waking up to the lies that we have been sold, and more people, not even without even having to stake a claim, they're just not going to be for it anymore, right? It's kind of like the common sense that we've kind of like tuned into is of like, that men shouldn't be allowed in women's bathrooms and all of this stuff. It's like everyone sensed that was all wild, and it didn't make it, it wasn't good. It was like empathy run rampant, and everyone sensed that like it was wrong. But it took like kind of like, an awakening and a uplifting of that energy to be like, hey, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. And this is why Trump gets into office, kind of thing. Not just because of the transgender thing, but like just, it was like just, he was finally saying the things that everybody was thinking quietly, but were too scared to bring out. And then one person brings it out, the Roger Bannister effect. And then it's okay for everyone to be like, yeah, that's all bullshit. Right. And so this is going to be happening repetitively. The world is going to continue to awaken, and as more people awaken, and it will head us towards more and more people seeking higher states of consciousness. And so what are the states of consciousness, and how do you get to higher states? Well, I mean, Hawkins essentially laid this all out for us, which is the map of consciousness all the way from, it's a logarithmic scale, 0 to 1,000. And he basically said, like, here's the roadmap. Here's exactly how you move up the scale of consciousness. Now, the great thing about moving up the scale of consciousness, as you transcend all of these levels that are below the level of force, which is like 200 at courage, life is tough during that, and pretty much 80% of the world is below the level of consciousness 200, right? And so once you go beyond the level of consciousness 200, everything begins to flow. Life begins to unfold. You begin to ride the wave of the universe unfolding, as opposed to swimming against the current. And this is when everything shifts. And so what's happening now with this awakening, due to kind of like becoming aware that we are riding that wave, as more and more people are waking up, we are then going to say, hey, like, what is the roadmap? And we will be the Roger Bannister effect for everybody else. So how do I circle all this back to, like, is the world ending, and where are we going from here? It's like, well, no, the world will not end if we just focus on ourselves and make sure that we continue to undo every single thing that is limiting us. And as we do that for ourselves, we do it for humanity, right? And so the best way to change the world is to change yourself. Who said that? Gandhi, I think, right? So it's like, yeah, someone that we should probably have listened to. He's at a high state of consciousness. So if we look inward and we make changes on our own, then we're going to change the world. That's literally the best thing that we can do, even more so than getting in front of a camera and putting things out onto YouTube or screaming it from a soapbox. It's like the best thing that we can possibly do is look inward. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, is just trying to undo the ego and the behaviors and the programs and the limitations that I took on unconsciously, right? And so what have been the big leaps for me recently to move inward so that I can get to this place where I just trust everything's going to be fine. And so where I always begin is with awareness. So we have to become aware of what it is that we're telling ourselves. And that comes from like taking this step back. And just actually even recently, I've been taking a bigger step back. Like even in this moment right now, I am observing myself sitting in front of this podcast, delivering this podcast, I'm observing that I just stuttered right there, and how the ego responded to like, oh, you just messed up, right? It's like a millisecond that the ego puts its programs in there, and I'm beginning to pay more and more attention to that. And so as you step into this observer, you can pay attention to how the ego is protecting. And so through that doorway of protection, we can get to the root of what it is that we're trying to avoid, through the process of leaning into that emotion, leaning into that pain, and showing the mind that we are fine there. We no longer need the protection. We no longer need that little like, oh, you just fucked up, which is one of my protections to try and protect me from fucking up, right? As you continue to undo all of that, right, we continue to move into higher states of consciousness. And if you can experience like one moment of like pure love, it's probably like one of the most healing things you could possibly do for the world. And so the only way I personally know how to get to those high states of consciousness is through the process of awareness and having the intention to want to move to higher states of consciousness. So if you have the intention to want to move to higher states of consciousness, then you are naturally going to be looking within to undo the primitive ego, if that makes sense. And so what do I want to leave you guys with here? I guess it's this, is that recognizing that the big recognition that I've had recently is that trying to figure out how to do anything for me has been one of my greatest blocks. This has been the one protection that has been revealed to me recently, right? Is the ego trying to control how to do anything. And so what I've become aware of is I can let go of that protection, right? And then the question I ask next is, what was that protecting me from? And I guess the simple answer is from failure, right? Because I've always kind of viewed myself as a solutions-oriented person. So it's like, if there's a problem, I will come up with an answer, right? And so that mechanism has served me really well, because it's like there's kind of no problems. It's like I always come up with the answer, right? But it's in the controlling of what that answer is that is the limitation, right? And so as we get into higher states of consciousness, we have to let go of things that are seemingly serving us, right? And so I have to let go of the control of being like the solutions-oriented person, recognizing that the solutions that I will come up with any single problem are probably limited to the circle of what I know. And so what I've been doing recently with respect to achieving anything is just surrendering over the how to do anything to God for me, right? And so I had this moment like recently with Lungo Vita. Our gift card sales were kind of slow, and I recognized that I needed to come up with a solution. And so I rang the warning bell, being like, "There's the ego and its programs coming in there." And I said, "Okay, I'm not going to try and figure this out." I just said to me, it's God, that's how I see it. I said, "God, what's the answer to this?" Right? What's the answer? And then I just went about my day. And anytime I tried to think about it, I just noticed it and I pushed it aside. I opened the question back up to God. And then within a matter of a few hours, I got the idea for this like Grinch commercial. Just like downloaded, saw the whole thing, saw it all. And in a matter of a few days, I ordered the Grinch costume. We filmed it, we edited it, we released it, and that commercial is doing well, and our gift card sales have skyrocketed, right? This is like a solution that came to me from letting go of trying to come up with a solution. All right. And so these are the things that I continue to undo. And this is the things that I'm going to share on this podcast. And so I guess the question I'll leave you with is what is it that you are unwilling to let go of? What is the figuring out that is blocking you from receiving the kind of like, go past go and collect $200 kind of like, moment. It's like me and my buddy Paul were just talking about this on like a kind of a session that we do. Is essentially recognizing that if you have the intention to climb any mountain, right, as long as you keep climbing, you're going to get to the top. But there are multiple routes to the top, and the fastest route to the top is usually the one that we are avoiding most, because in order to see that fastest route, we have to clear all of the noise of us trying to figure out how to get to the top. And so when we clear all of that noise, that route may look like kind of like the old snakes and ladders. Like you could be on like the switchback that's like really, really long, or you can just climb this ladder and like skip all this really, really long switchback. And so that's the kind of clarity that comes. It's like when we let go of trying to figure out how we're supposed to climb the mountain, and we just trust that if we keep walking, we are going to get to the top. And when we do that, and we just trust in the process, we trust in the that the answers to get to the top quicker are going to be revealed to us. Then boom, they're revealed, and it's like all of a sudden when you see it, you're like, whoa. Like, how could I not see that before? And the reason that you couldn't see that before is because you were trying to figure it out. You were trying to solve. You were trying to answer the question from the limited circle of what you know. And in order to make gigantic leaps in our life, it has to come from the unknown. And I think that's been the big aha for me this week is that the ego is still trying to control. And now I need to relinquish that control to God. And so that's what I'm going to continue to do. And that's how, I got here back to podcasting. That's how I got to this place of like, just do everything for free. Right. And so hopefully the message continues to evolve. Hopefully I get better, but I'm not trying to figure any of that out. I'm just allowing that to be revealed to me. And so I'll leave you with this. If you have a question, if you're willing to come on the podcast and do a live coaching session, that would be amazing. You can just comment below, reach out to me, and I'll get in touch with you. You can just go to my website also to fill out any questions. It's davidhaas.ca. You can just fill out a question. I'll answer that question on a podcast or in some sort of form of content. Or if you're brave enough, we could set up a live podcast / coaching session and work the problems out on air kind of thing. Because I believe that in having other people see other people solve their own issues through this connection, it opens the door for more and more people to do the same. So reach out to me if you got any value from this podcast, even though it's a little bit of a ramble, but I'm okay with it. It'll get better. Click that subscribe button. Thanks for taking the time to listen.